Welcome back to the Hello Velocity podcast, where we help corporate women level up without burning out. I'm your host, Brittany Knaski, leadership coach and trainer here at Hello Velocity. Today, we're joined by Megan Graham. Megan is the founder and chief memory creator for Cherish Tours. With a background in conference planning and a global canvas of world travel experiences, she's become deeply convinced that travel has the power to be transformational, especially for women striving to create a difference in the world. As a dedicated advocate for empowering women globally, Megan's influence extends well beyond her travels to 40 countries, including over 10 solo adventures. Her unique perspective and innovative approach have set her apart, making significant contributions to discussions on sustainable tourism, global women's businesses, the post-pandemic travel surge, women's travel experiences, and travel safety. Wow, welcome today, Megan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brittany. I'm so excited to be here and chat with everyone. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. And I'm excited, again, even just reading your bio, I'm excited about all these topics that you talk about. And I'm a big fan of travel myself personally. So any excuse to talk about travel, I'm here for it. And I could literally talk all day about travel. But before we dive into it, I love to start with sharing about how we met. So I was trying to think about it. I think we met during COVID. I think it was a virtual networking event. Does that sound right to you?
Think so. I know it was through Pink Mentor Network in Charlotte. I
Mhm.
did attend a few in-person events before I relocated from Charlotte to Atlanta, but I can't remember if we met at one of those or if it was actually online after they started doing the online events. So I was pretty involved in it throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it was early in the pandemic because I don't think I ever made it to any of the in-person events. I didn't hear
Okay.
about them until after the pandemic hit. So, yeah, we've known each other for quite a few years now. And yeah, you had just, I think, moved to Atlanta when we met. So we just missed paths here in Charlotte. But regardless, it's been great to follow your journey of your business as well. And I know we started our businesses around similar times too. But yeah, I'd love to hear too, you shared a bit in your bio of your journey, your experience, but I'd love to hear too in your own words how you got to owning a business that helps women travel around the world. Like, how cool is that?
It's crazy to hear my bio said out loud by other people because sometimes you're like, "Oh yeah, that's me. That's what I've done. That's what I'm doing." And it feels that way because Cherish, when it started, was just a dream. It was something that I came up with during the pandemic, and I was like, "How do I shift my career to have some type of impact in the world?" And be something that I'm passionate about while also supporting women. And that's how Cherish came about, was really just sitting in my own thoughts and working with a business coach trying to like transfer my career or get an exit plan out of my current career. And then the pandemic happened to be my exit plan. And I was actually in Turkey during the pandemic. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, I would love to bring women to places like this and to have them experience it in a different way where they can be immersed in local culture and get to know local women. And it was just an idea while I was traveling, and now it's 5 years in the making.
Wow. I love how fitting that is that the idea came to you while traveling too. It's so perfect. And yeah, thinking about too this season of the podcast here is all about confidence. So, how do you see confidence playing into travel and your business and helping women travel?
So I'll start with my business and myself. I think that one of the biggest things is that being an entrepreneur takes confidence regardless of what you're doing, whether it's travel or being a coach like you, Brittany, or literally anything that you're trying to do. If it's something you're breaking off on your own, it takes confidence and it takes belief in yourself. And that's not always constant. Even though I've been doing this 5 years, I definitely have a roller coaster that I ride when it comes to confidence in what I'm doing. Um, and then when it comes to traveling, especially traveling solo, I think that it takes an extreme amount of confidence. I'm someone who actually started traveling on my own when I was about 14, 15 years old. So I went to the Caribbean without my parents, without my family, and joined a group trip when I was only 15. So it was something that I think was in my nature. And I grew confidence from a young age in it. But for people who are wanting to just go ahead and try to start now and get out there and try new things, you have to start with a place that is a little outside of your comfort zone so you can build that confidence. And yet at the same time, start with something that makes you feel like not too scared so that you can actually try new things and actually go and not quit on yourself in the middle of it. So whether that is completely by yourself or maybe with a group trip like what Cherish offers, it's just dipping your foot in the water and building the confidence one trip after another.
I love that. That's so much easier way to look at it too, where I think some people hear, travel and being experienced travel and they think, oh, I have to go, to a foreign country that speaks a different language. And it sounds so daunting to even think about what that can look like for someone that isn't that experienced traveling. But there's so many different routes you can take, so many different groups you can join or other people to travel with, not just, spouse or partner, but even friends or like your groups where it's bringing women together who either already love to travel or want to travel more and have that common interest. And yeah, as we were thinking about this podcast, I was thinking about my own journey for confidence in travel and how it's progressed over the years. So I went to Spain in high school with our Spanish club. So I was maybe 16 at the time, and that was required some confidence, of course. I mean, I was with a group of other students and teachers, and it was amazing. I just absolutely loved it. And I think that's when I got the travel bug, probably, or that really ignited it in me. And then growing up or getting older, I would, travel to visit friends by myself. But then I would, as I, me and my now husband, we both love to travel too. So even thinking about our progression, of travel, we started off domestically, and then we did some all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean where it's like, okay, it's international. It's a little bit more scary, right? Because a lot of times they don't speak English where you're going, but on the resort they do, so it's safe or it feels, less uh, less worrisome in that way of having to know the language, and you get the private transfer to and from the airport. And then now the last few years we've been doing more international trips to like in Europe, and we started with Ireland because they spoke English and it's so beautiful there, and then we did Portugal, Spain. So that's been such an interesting way to think about our own journey of kind of, like you said, get that experience of just doing a little bit more and a little bit more. And but also I think we've been increasing the gradient of what we're comfortable with and just saying, okay, if we did this, what's the next level? What's the next level? Like, how do we make it, we can explore more, but also within our comfort zone. But then every time I travel, I still feel myself pushing my comfort zone in such a good way. And that's, interestingly enough, I started a talk about confidence 4 years ago, and it was inspired by my trip to Portugal because I realized while I was there, like, oh, something feels off. And I realized it was that I just wasn't feeling confident because I don't speak Portuguese. And that was difficult to navigate around the country without knowing the language. But it was also amazing and I loved it. And I still highly recommend it to other people.
I have so much to say based off what you just talked about because there's so many pockets of things that you're referring to as far as confidence and traveling goes. I think language barrier is something people talk about pretty often, but people always want to feel heard and understood. So, regardless of you being in a country that maybe doesn't speak English, most people I've come across are trying to be helpful, regardless of knowing English or not. So sometimes you revert back to pantomiming and pointing and all those types of things. But it's something that shouldn't intimidate people, I think, as much as it does, because Sure, it's confusing and it's maybe easier to be in a country that speaks English or around people who speak English or have a guide that can translate for you. But you can always order a coffee at a cafe. And if it's the wrong one, go back and order another. I think it's something that is navigable and is a good place to realize that there's a lot of technology to help you now too. And then you also mentioned like your gradient for what you're doing with your husband travel wise. And I love to hear that because I think a lot of people never leave their comfort zone when it comes to travel. And it's something that a lot of people tend to travel the way you said you started you traveling, where it was in a group, it was maybe at an all-inclusive resort. It was something that you felt like it's all taken care of for me. And I think that's great. I think group tours are a great way to do that, or even private tours, because then you're getting picked up at the airport, your accommodations are taken care of, and your guides are there to help you each step of the way. Uh, but I also think that you don't get a full experience of a location, of culture, of things like that when you go to an all-inclusive resort or you potentially take a cruise or something like that, because then you're not really getting off that beaten path and you're not experiencing things through a local's perspective. So I think a tip that I would add there is that even if you are someone who wants to go to an all-inclusive resort or a luxury resort or on a cruise, you can book excursions with locals instead of booking it through directly the resort or the cruise ship.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I actually recently learned that Airbnb now does experiences too. And we've done some of those when we're abroad. And those have been great too because it's people who literally live there. It's the locals and it's a small group of 5 to 10 people usually. We did one in Spain that was a cooking class, and it was this local woman who owns her own shop there that does cooking classes. And we learned to make paella with her and like 6 other people. And it was amazing. It was so fun. And I love those experiences where you are, like you're saying, kind of more immersed in the culture. You're meeting local people. And I think too, when we travel, especially now internationally too, we love to talk with local bartenders. Actually, we do this domestically too. That's our favorite way to get the local recommendations of, oh, what else should we do while we're here? You ask the bartender, you ask the waiter, waitress, and they have some of the best tips too because they know the stuff that's, hey, this is my favorite spot I go to every day, or this is where the locals go. And those are some of our favorite highlights from our trips are when we get those recommendations and we go to these places like we would never have known about this otherwise.
Yes, 1000%. I think that it's one of those things that when you ask someone who lives there, they're going to tell you something completely different than what the guide online is going to tell you or what Google might tell you. Even if you ask ChatGPT and say, hey, give me something local, it's pulling from Google and Yelp and those types of things. You're really going to get the most hyper localized experience when you're asking someone who lives there or you're asking someone who's been.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, that Chat GPT is just pulling from the most common blog posts and yeah, TripAdvisor and all of those things. Okay, so a lot of our listeners are corporate women, and I know we've touched on some things that may hold people back from traveling, like language barriers, or I know sometimes people just get overwhelmed planning some of their travel. But what are some of those other common reasons that you see specifically maybe from corporate women? Because I know women are your bread and butter for your company and who you're working with. Do you get other reasons that come up a lot of what's holding people back?
I will first say that guilt is probably the biggest one. And I don't know if that resonates for anyone listening right now, but if I explain further, it might. I think it's this I have something to do at work. I'm leaving my coworkers behind. I'm leaving my family behind. I'm busy. I have these things. So it's all connected back to guilt, in my opinion. It's like if I leave my desk, if I leave my coworkers, if I leave my family, then I should feel guilty for not showing up the way that I'm supposed to. And I'm doing air quotes on purpose because supposed to is defined by yourself. And I think the more you gain confidence in yourself of how you want to define your own life and how you want to spend your time and balance it, the less you'll feel guilty about spending it that way. And so I think that, most people know the statistic that Americans don't use all of their paid time off. And for me, I think that's associated with guilt. It's associated with the supposed tos that you're meant to accomplish and get done. And the more you can realize that your paid time off is for you to use, it's for you to feel re energized and to take the vacations that are meaningful for you, or even just take time off in your own hometown so that you can feel again re-energized and feel better about going back to work. And the more I think people would actually use that paid time off and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, I'm sure the guilt is going to resonate with a lot of people listening. I know that's resonating with me too when I've first started traveling, especially. You feel guilty back when I was in corporate taking the time off. And I'm sure too, a lot of people, there's an angle of guilt for spending money on yourself, right? Of spending money on this experience. And of course, travel's getting more and more expensive, but also everything is getting more and more expensive right now. So I'm sure that's playing into it too, is, especially trips like yours where it's women traveling with other women. So probably mostly they're coming on their own or maybe with a friend. It probably can be harder for them to think about investing in themselves like that. Do you see that as well?
I would definitely say so. I think that it's really difficult as women to be like, I deserve this for myself. I think society, especially here in the US, has defined how we're supposed to feel value, and that looks a very certain way. And the more that we break that norm, the more it becomes normalized for more women, which I think is good. And so I think that the investing in yourself, both monetarily, time wise, and otherwise, is something that we're not used to when we're given the role as caregiver.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking back to the first like group trip I took as an adult actually came in 2020 right before COVID, but it was after I'd done a bunch of coaching myself. It was the first time I'd worked with a coach in 2019 and I'd done a lot of personal development work. And that was the first time I said out loud that travel was important to me. It was a priority. And I had started a savings account as one of my goals within my coaching partnership so that by the time 2020 came, I had money saved for what I was hoping would be, some opportunity that would come up for me to go on my own. And I heard about a yoga retreat with one of my favorite yoga teachers here in Charlotte going to Hawaii. And I had almost the exact amount of money I needed in that account saved when I heard about this trip. I'm like, all right, that's a sign. I love believing in signs. Like, that's a sign. I have to do it. Hawaii is amazing. And it was actually February 2020 that that trip happened in, and I'm so thankful it happened right before COVID so that I was able to do it because it was a life-changing experience. I just absolutely loved it, and to go on a trip not knowing anyone else that was going to be on it besides the person organizing it, and to build such deep bonds with these women, it felt like in 5 days. Like, I'd never met any of these women, and then by the end I was saying goodbye and crying as I said bye to these people. And just having so much growth while you're exploring a new place, especially Hawaii, super beautiful, highly recommend. I'm obsessed and can't wait to go back. And yeah, just there's so much you can gain from an experience like that. But I also understand the other side, how many people hold back from something like that, or they're, again, scared to spend the money on it. They're scared to take the time away from their family, their job to do it. But I guess I'm just doubling down on the recommendation that it is totally worth it and to find, those right experiences for you that will have whatever the impact is that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, we have a lot of women who come to us during big transitional periods in their life. We go through a lot of change as women, whether you are a new empty nester, your kids just went to college or moved out, or you're someone who just had a career change, you shifted from corporate to entrepreneur, or even from a big corporate role to another role, or just healed from an illness of some kind. We see a lot of travelers on our trips who have gone through these changes in their lives because, like you're describing, travel can be super healing. And that's why Cherish does women only tours, because when you're in community with other women who lift you up, it's healing. And it doesn't even need to be a retreat. It can just be something that we come together to try new experiences and to really get to know one another in an entirely different place. It creates the bonds that you're describing.
Yeah. Do you have recommendations for people to like come up with intentions for their travel or something like that? That's just coming to mind now as you're talking about these different transitions people are going through. It just makes so much sense. And now I'm thinking about listeners too of, you know, how to find their why behind their next trip or, what could that intention be?
Yeah, I'm actually a certified travel coach. So that's part of like what I help women do too when they sign up for our trips is why are you going? What does it mean to you? It's more than just a vacation because we want women to not only grow the bonds with themselves, but with the people around them and also the communities that they're going to. So we incorporate local women into our trips as well. And so for us, the intention might not be clear right at the beginning, but then you'll get there and you'll be like, wow, I think I need a little bit more time to myself. I always recommend bringing a journal or something like that that you can reflect after your days, and especially in places like Tanzania or Panama, where you're experiencing a culture completely different than your own, you might need a few minutes to be like, wow, this is what I experienced today. This is who I met. This is what I learned. I think my tip for figuring out your intention before travel is to really sit with what's the biggest question on your mind in your life right now, and how can you translate that to a travel experience. So, for me right now, one of the biggest questions that I have in my life is how much should I grow Cherish? Should it be something that I keep at the boutique size, or do I really want to scale it? Do I want it to be something that can be acquirable in the future? And while I'm thinking through those questions, my intention for travel comes out because it's like I sit with what do I want? What do I need when I travel? And my intention is clear when I go is like I need time for myself to reflect, to think, and to get deeper with what my wants are and my goals.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of keeping it open, right? It's not so strict. It doesn't have to be, I need to set aside 10 minutes every morning to journal, to reflect, to whatever. Because I think sometimes people like me, the high achiever, perfectionist, whatever, we need to have a plan. We need to have this clear path of what it's going to look like or what we're trying to solve. But when you kind of take that step back and it's more just an open-ended question of what's on my mind, what am I trying to work through, and you just kind of leave it there, and you'll be probably surprised when it comes to you too, of when that inspiration hits you. You could be, on the safari in Tanzania, you might be on the plane there, you might be on the plane back, you might be sitting on a beach somewhere, you may never know when that moment will hit you of clarity. And I think that's one of the best, or one of my favorite parts of travel too, is I get so much clarity whether or not I have a super clear intention for the trip or not. I'm always just open and keeping my mind open to what may come through, what new ideas come through or inspiration. And yeah, I think that's part of the being outside your comfort zone too. It's like you're outside your normal routine. You're not having your usual everyday decisions and thoughts and in your same space. You're in these new beautiful spaces. You're talking to new people, learning about different cultures, eating different food, and all these different things can just spark that inspiration in different ways.
Definitely. I think for me, travel is one of the only times where I get moments of quiet, which is interesting because people might say, well, don't you get peace and quiet when you're in your own home? And I'm like, yeah, but there's always something to do when you're at home, right? There's the next thing that you have to take care of. Where when I travel and I'm out on a boat in the Kenai fjords in Alaska watching whales, there's nothing else to do but be present in that. And I love that feeling. And I think it's something people need to have more of.
Yeah, you just reminded me too, another moment from my Hawaii trip that sticks with me is we were on a boat and we swam with dolphins, wild dolphins, which was incredible. First of all, that is just like a moment forever, like ingrained in my head of just swimming and looking all around me are just wild dolphins having the time of their lives. But then also after that, they had mentioned, oh, there might be whales, we'll kind of drive around and see if we can see them, but it's, very hit or miss if you're going to see whales. And then we saw a family of whales with a baby, and I just sat there and just started crying. I'm like, this is so beautiful. And it's another one of those things you can't plan it. And I didn't know what to expect, but I was so moved by just nature and the peacefulness of it, and that they're just swimming by fairly close to us, and they didn't seem to care at all. And we were just there admiring them, respecting them. And I'm just like, wow, the world is so amazing. Nature is amazing. I'm in awe of it. And obviously they're so huge. And I'm like, we are just these little, tiny humans on this huge planet. And I don't get those moments otherwise. You don't get those moments of awe, I think, as much in your own space, in your own environment on your day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think going back to you saying, I'm a high achiever, I like to have my intentions planned out or time planned out. I think sometimes when high achieving women travel or type A women travel, they create a schedule for themselves that's like at 10 a.m., I'm going to do this, at noon, I'm going to do this. And then by 5 p.m., we're having dinner, sitting down at restaurant that I've made a reservation for. And while some days need to be like that so that you can see the bucket list items and make sure that you have tickets to the things that might sell out, I think fluidity in travel is really important for the moments that you're describing, where you can have things that will surprise you. And the way that I typically do that in my own personal travels is to create a priority list. So I'm planning not by hour, but the things I want to see. So if I'm trying to think of an example. I'm going to Moab, Utah, and I want to go to Arches National Park. That requires a ticket in advance. And the rest might be able to be something I do on a whim or a little bit less timed out. So if your priority is to see arches and to go ahead and maybe go base jumping because you're an adventure seeker, you book those two things because those are your priority list. And then the rest of the things can fit in around those.
I love that. That's a great point to call out to the high achieving people like me that love our lists. We love our plans. And I've definitely learned that the hard way in our travel experience too. Like our first international trip was Ireland, like I mentioned, and I planned day by day. We were in a different Airbnb or hotel almost every night. We did 5 days, and I was like, oh, it's a small country. We can drive 2 to 3 hours a day. That's fine. So we did the whole country, literally looped the whole country of Ireland in 5 days, staying at three different spots, I think, in 5 nights. And by day two, I think we were both like, oh my God. Actually, no, day one, we were both like, wait, this is too much because it involved us going on a red eye, getting there at 7 a.m. And then my husband driving 3 hours across the country to our first hotel. And we were both like, oh, this wasn't a good idea. So I went in with my, oh, I have to have a plan. We have to have it all, mapped out and all these places we're going to see and things we're going to do. And now I've learned that's not the vibe we're going for. But yeah, I love this idea of prioritization of what you want to see, what you want to do. Think about what needs tickets, what doesn't need tickets. And even we went to Spain this year, and that one we did different. So we had a full week. We stayed in one spot the whole time, which was a really fun way to do it because then it almost felt like we were locals by the end of, oh, this is our house and this is our market that we walk to. This is our cafe we go to, and everything we got used to where things were and where we were going, and then I had just booked one thing per day for us in advance as an option, and it was all stuff that we could cancel if we wanted to, but, the cooking class I mentioned, or different tours and things like that, so it was enough to keep us give us something to do each day and to learn something new each day, but it kinda gave us an out, like, if we're not feeling it, they're all things that we can cancel, get our money back, and all those things, and that was a good in between for us, so I think, again, you get more confident as you do it more, but I think everyone has to learn what works best for them too, of, like, how much structure and how to prioritize along the way.
You're literally describing what's called slow travel. And that's something that I think is really important as far as like themes or trends in travel is going right now. It's moving towards slow travel, where you're not going to go to Italy and see Rome, Venice, Milan, Florence, and whatever all in a week. That's too much. It's going to make you exhausted by the end. You're going to need a vacation from your own vacation, and that's not the goal, and you're going to miss so much. So I think it's really important to do it in a way that is a bit slower and always remind yourself that there's an opportunity to go back again. So, especially places that are closer to the United States, for example, like you said, Spain or Costa Rica or Mexico or things like that, you don't need to see absolutely everything all in your 5 day to 7 day trip. You can go back another time if you really love it. It's a good opportunity to get to know the place, see if you even like it, and see if you want to go back. That's how I feel like I plan Cherish's trips, is very much so in a slower version of a tour. We typically only do 2 to 3 destinations in a week to 10 days. So, and that's not even different countries. I'm calling destinations cities within a country. So, our Scandinavia tour next summer, for example, goes to 2 cities in Denmark and 1 city in Norway. And our Tanzania trip, you spend at least 2 nights in every place that you're going so that you get a better feel for the areas you're in.
Yeah, that's huge. I didn't know there was a term for this, slow travel. I like it. Yeah, I'm definitely realizing that's more, at least currently, what I'm looking for these days is that I want the time to really explore one or two places, and I don't want to be in a car or bus or train too much. And that's, yeah, again, what I kind of learned the hard way. Something else I find really inspiring about your trips that you're planning is that you're working with local women too, everywhere that you're going, and that's part of the tours. So I'd love to hear more about how that works and like anyone interesting that you've met along the way that you'd like to share.
Oh my gosh, I've met so many interesting and incredible women all over the world. It's just one of my favorite things about Cherish and the fact that I get to go on all of these tours myself. So I don't lead all the tours anymore myself, but source all of the trips myself. So I go to the place beforehand and I try the itinerary out. I meet the local women. I make sure that the partnerships that we have within Cherish are meaningful and along the lines of the mission that we're trying to accomplish, which is supporting these local women, supporting local economy. I don't want there's a there's a term called greenwashing right now in the travel space where it's something that because sustainability is trendy, a lot of these big properties are being like, look, we wash towels less. We do these things that are very obviously sustainable, but they're not really doing the on the ground work to support local communities, to support the local environment, things like that. And that's called greenwashing. And so I don't wanna participate in that. I wanna meet the women, I wanna know that we're supporting them. And anyways, I got off track of your question, but really it's so important to know and get to know these women. So in Panama, I've met some incredible indigenous women. There's this woman in Panama that is from France originally, but now lives in the islands of Panama to support the indigenous communities there. And she started a program in order to send indigenous women to school to learn trade skills such as solar panel engineering and things like that, so that not only their communities can become self sustainable, but that these women no longer have to be dependent on getting married and having kids as their only option in life. So things like that to me are just incredible stories. I also met a woman in Tanzania who is fully supporting women to go to school. Secondary school in Tanzania is really hard to achieve for people living in poverty and to be able to attend. So she's helping pay for their entire experience, their uniform, everything they need for school. Typically, it's not actually by where they're from. They have to move further away from home in order to attend. So she's helping find them places to live, to support their food needs if they aren't able to afford it, so that they can go to school and then hopefully for generations to come lift their families out of poverty because they're now educated. And Cherish's trips actually directly support women who are part of this scholarship program. And we have a woman guide as part of our team now in Tanzania, and she's born and raised in Tanzania. She's a photographer and a videographer, and she is someone we've brought on so that people can learn about these cultural nuances when they go to Tanzania. And she's just so incredible, and I'm really happy to have her a part of our team. And I could go on and on about the women in these places and the things that they're doing to make a difference in their communities and to see other women from where they're from do just as well, if not better than themselves. There's statistics out there that prove that when you invest in women, they reinvest in their community. And that's the ripple effect that I'm hoping to see and that I'm investing in from Cherish's perspective with our trips.
Yeah, and that's such a huge difference just hearing this compared to, again, like the big cruise lines or, the big tour guide companies that sometimes people book with, and not calling people out, but it's just to see the difference. It's so powerful of how you can invest in those like micro local economies when you travel somewhere and actually leave a better, imprint or footprint when you go somewhere. Because I know that's part of this sustainable travel too, is that there's so many countries and cities right now that are kind of almost mad at tourists, or the locals are mad at tourists. I've heard that a lot about Spain and Italy, especially, where it's almost tourism is starting to have a negative impact on the locals there because it's just so many people going to these places. So if you can travel in a more intentional way that's leaving powerful impact on not just the local economy, but individuals there and like changing their life for the better, like what more reason? I mean, as if I needed another reason to travel. Now you're just giving us even more. But any other thoughts on that of like that version of sustainable travel too, and how some countries are getting a bit tired of us Americans going there?
Yeah, like you said, I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm definitely not saying don't go to all inclusive resorts, don't stay at the Ritz Carlton, don't go on a cruise. But there's ways that you can make small shifts in order to make those things more meaningful for the places that you're going. Like I said earlier, as we were talking, you can book a local guide instead of booking the excursion through the cruise ship. Or if you're going to Italy, instead of going in July, go in May, because it makes a huge difference because you're spreading out the economy over time. You're really helping locals have income throughout the year instead of at one high point during the year. And then there's ways that you can engage in the local community in a very intentional way. And if you don't know how to do that, you can ask a local and they'll tell you, or you can ask someone like me who can help you plan a trip for your family, or you can join one of our established trips so that you can do it in a more intentional way. And you can research places that are already doing it. For example, there's shifts going on in Peru near Machu Picchu. There's shifts going on in India. There's front runners that are doing changes to make the local economy feel more supported. Even Spain, for example, in Barcelona, they've put out a I guess, local law that has said that these Airbnb properties that are owned by developers are no longer allowed to be in the central of Barcelona after 2028. So they're moving these things away in order to have locals have a better opportunity of living central or investing in properties centrally. So there's tons of ways to engage in this and to do it in a different way and to do it in small ways so it doesn't feel so intimidating. It's a subject I'm very passionate about and I could go on and on about, but I think really the biggest takeaway that I would want anyone listening to hear or anyone who is thinking about traveling in a more meaningful way is to just engage with the local community. That's the biggest takeaway is figure out how you can do that. And in doing that, lead with curiosity and not judgment.
It's like a drop the mic moment. I love it. And I appreciate that it is something small so that people can start with. It doesn't have to be the whole trip. It doesn't have to be, your every single thought while you're there. It's start somewhere and start with the local economy and what you can do. I love that. So another angle that I know can be intimidating for, again, corporate women, we're kind of touching on all these different things that might be stopping people or ways to make it easier for people. And I know you and I have done a lot of travel, and we've talked about this before too, about how to make it a little bit easier when you're planning before a trip or coming back from a trip, because I know that can be something I've talked about with lots of peers, clients, and even myself. It can feel kind of daunting, and that may stop people from going to is that, oh, if I'm gone for a week, my email piles up and it's so stressful, it's not even worth it. So do you have any tips for how to address that before and or after traveling?
So we haven't been in corporate in a while, but I know that there's systems in place, hopefully, if you're in a good corporate space where you can pass things off to someone you trust and you have hopefully a community that's supporting you. Other than that, I think in becoming an entrepreneur, I've learned that checking my email once a day is not the worst thing ever when it comes to traveling. Just filing it and being like, this isn't important. I don't have to come back to this. So that way your inbox isn't at multiple hundreds of emails when you come back is less stressful. And then I think one thing that I've shifted that I think is really important is I no longer travel from like Friday until the following Sunday. Then you're using every single minute of all of your time and you're tired leaving work and you're tired getting back from your trip. And then you have to go right back into work. And it doesn't leave you any time to decompress, to feel like you got rest out of your vacation, unless you were resting the entire time on your vacation. I think it's really important to make small shifts like traveling on Saturday to Saturday. That's still a whole 8-day trip, 7 nights. But then you have all of Sunday when you come back to go through that inbox if you want to, or just take a rest day. And also, you're not leaving right after work on a Friday. That way, you're not feeling rushed. You probably won't forget something when it comes to packing or anything else that you have because your brain's so scattered. I think it's really small shifts like that where you can be more intentional about your time is a great way to prioritize travel, but also prioritize your energy.
I love that. I started doing that recently too, the having a buffer day or at least a solid half a day, I would call it, where we could even get back maybe early on a Sunday. But if possible, I like to have that full day before I get back to any sort of work or obligations, and that's been so helpful, and it almost feels luxurious to have the full day to, sometimes we order groceries when we're at the airport online to be ready when we're driving home from the airport and pick them up. That's super helpful. And then I have time to unpack, do laundry, or just chill out by myself and watch a movie and just like kind of veg out for the night and not think about anything and not drive anywhere or do anything. And that, yeah, that helps decompress after a trip and set myself up to get back into work mode. And another piece of that too is blocking my calendar for my first day back of like the first half of the day. So no one's booking any meetings. I'm not booking any meetings because we always, before trips, we're like, oh yeah, I could totally do a 9 a.m. meeting after I get back from Spain. You're like, oh wait, no, that doesn't make sense when you get back. So thinking about blocking some of that time to actually give you the space to catch up on your email, to not jump into a meeting right away, but to like get caught up and think more intentionally too about the rest of that week or whenever you're coming back.
Yeah, I love these tips that you're sharing because it goes back to our theme about investing in yourself. If ordering groceries costs, let's say, 10 more dollars than going to pick them up, that's an investment that's worth your time and worth like less the headache of having to do it or the stress when you come back. If you're someone who likes to come home to a clean house, pay someone to clean it while you're gone. Do things like that is a great way to invest in yourself so that you can come back on a high note and feel like you really spent the time and investment in your trip to feel re-energized and to feel rejuvenated in coming back home. I think it's so, so important.
Yeah, it really does go a long way, even if it's just one or two of those tips, that can go a really long way. All right. One other thing coming to mind is that we're approaching the holiday travel season. And I know it's some of the busiest travel time of the year, especially here in the US. So, any advice for people that are going to be stepping into that, whether it's again from the work perspective or just travel and how to stay sane while going through this travel season?
Yeah, the two peak seasons for travel are definitely right in the middle of summer, so July and early August, and then the holidays. I think most of the time for the holidays, people are traveling home to family if they don't live close anymore, or they're all traveling together as a family. So I think for me, not in my 20s anymore. I think most of us who are probably listening are not. So I think I used to be more agreeable when it came to family travel, that I would be like, "Yeah, I can share a room with my brother. I'm good." No, none of that anymore. Take time for yourself. If you need to pay for your own room or, get your own space while you're traveling home, do it. It's worth it. It's worth your sanity. And then as far as navigating the busyness of it, don't be an anxious traveler. And that sounds so easy coming out of my mouth, like, oh, just don't be anxious. No, but give yourself the proper amount of time and space to be able to get to the airport, to drive where you're going so that it doesn't cause that anxiety and that stress. If you're someone who might push the envelope and be like, "Ah, I can get to the airport an hour before," not during the holidays. Go a little bit earlier and, spend 35 bucks if you want to go into a airport lounge instead so that you have a little bit more comfort during your extra time in the airport. Having extra time in the airport is so much better than having not enough. And I would also say during the busyness, it's like you have to zone people out to the best of your ability because everybody's in a rush and everyone has somewhere to go. You do too. And you can relate to other people's stress and where they're going, but try to not try to not let it bother you as much as it could.
Yeah, that's huge. Actually, these headphones are noise canceling headphones I bought for travel, and they are a lifesaver for that. Of just I can be in my own world on a plane or even just walking through the airport when it's super loud. And like you're saying, everyone has somewhere to be. Everyone's sometimes in a mood when they're traveling, or maybe not at their happiest when they're in the airport or airplane. So even just something like this is super helpful.
I would actually add, now that you say that too, like expect the unexpected, especially in the holiday season. It never goes exactly the way that you are planning, and if it did, you're super lucky. So just be ready for something that might be different. And, hey, if you're one of those people that's willing to take the travel credit that the airline's giving because they're oversold during the holidays, it goes up so much money. I think most recently I've heard like about $1,000 to get off the plane. So take it if you can.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So, any upcoming trips or resources you want to share with listeners today?
Yeah, so our first trip of the year in 2026 is our Tanzania safari. It's from March 4th until the 14th. And so we are super excited to host that trip again for the third time and actually fourth time. And I'm really happy to bring people back to this amazing country to do this bucket list experience of seeing a safari and seeing Africa's big five, the lions, elephants. It's just really incredible. But we do it a little bit differently, of course, with integrating local culture. And so you get the opportunity to meet the Maasai people, to go to a local market, to, of course, interact with our guide who is from Tanzania. So it's just really, really special. And then I also think I would also like to mention that Cherish is now able to book private trips for people. We specialize in groups, so typically at least 6 people, but we can take you to any of our destinations of expertise for any of your groups and put together a custom itinerary. So now that we're coming to the end of the year, people are already thinking about their spring and summer trips for next year. And I'm more than happy to customize a trip for anyone who's listening and be able to support them with a vacation that's more meaningful.
What a great resource to have an expert help planning a trip. So I will definitely link your website and the Tanzania trip in our show notes. And how else can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So our Instagram is a great place to check out, as well as just emailing me. You can email us at info@gocherishtours.com. That's a great place to get in touch with me or my team. And then also today we have a promo code through the podcast. It's Hello Velocity 100, and that will take $100 off any of our upcoming trips for 2026. We've launched our calendar through July of 2026. So you can see all of our trips on our website and see what you might be interested in joining.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the promo code for the listeners. That's amazing. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us today, Megan. This was an amazing conversation. And like I said, I could talk about travel with you all day. This is so fun. And I hope listeners learned a lot of new tips and tricks today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. And I hope that it was valuable for everybody listening and that they walked away with at least one good tip for their next upcoming vacation and that they're able to have really incredible experiences in 2026 and beyond.
Yes, definitely. And thank you, as always, to our listeners for joining today. What's one thing that you would like to take action on from what you learned today? And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a quick review or like on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps new people find the podcast and in turn find the support that they're also looking for. And that's it for today. We'll see you in the next episode.